Is your social security number secretly tied to a trust account worth millions? And if so, can you use that account to discharge debt? This is what the Strawman Theory claims, and today I'm going to be breaking it down in plain English. Alright? In this video, I'm going to be showing you how this concept connects to the US financial system, debt discharge, debt collection, and why so many people believe it's the key to financial freedom. So, first thing I want to dive into, man, thank you guys for watching this video. If you're brand new, make sure to like the video. Make sure to subscribe to the channel. I post daily content. All right. Also at the same time, you guys went crazy on my last video. So if you haven't seen it already, go ahead and click the link right there and tap into my last video where I talked about 1099 and how to be able to use that to discharge your debt. Okay. So let's dive into it. All right. What is the Strawman Theory? All right. The Strawman Theory is the belief that when you are born, the government creates a second version of you, a fictional legal entity, using your name in all caps. This strawman is tied to your birth certificate, social security number, and your legal identity. According to this theory, this entity is traded and used as collateral on the international markets. You, the flesh and blood human, are supposedly separate from that entity, and that's where things get interesting. All right? This theory, the proponents of this theory, believe that a secret trust or an account is created in your strawman's name and that you can access this account or use it to discharge debt if you know how to separate yourself from the strawman. I'm about to be diving into this, so if you haven't already, like the video, because we're about to be talking about this we're gonna call it a theory. All right, and if you guys are understanding me and we're on the same frequency, then you know what I mean and why I'm calling it a theory. Okay, essentially, when you look back, when you're born, there is a straw man created in your name. Okay, and when you look at your name being the all caps, it is a entity. You dig me? Now, before I start to get deep down into that, let's talk about the facts behind the theory and where there might be some truth hidden beneath the surface. The first thing I want to talk about is the fact that your birth certificate is indeed a financial instrument. You dig me? It is recorded and tracked. And when you look at the definition of certificate, a certificate is almost like a receipt, almost like a title. All right. Your SSN is issued by the Treasury and is used in connection with credit, taxes, and federal contracts. Also, number 3, the U.S. is a corporation-based system where legal fictions like trust and corporations hold weight. But here's the catch. There's no public record of a secret account with millions in your name. Okay? The Federal Reserve or the U.S. Treasury won't confirm this type of account existence for public use, and the attempts to access these alleged accounts often result in fraud charges or being labeled as a sovereign citizen, which the courts do not support. Okay? So the aspect of it's okay for the court to not support this, it's okay for them to not confirm this, but there's too much evidence that even regardless, right? We can have this sovereign citizen conversation, but regardless, there are still aspects of this that confirms and doesn't deny the fact that debt can be discharged. Okay? So what does this have to do with debt discharge? So things get real. Even if you can't tap into a secret trust, the concepts behind the strawman theory can still help you understand how debt and identity are manipulated. Okay? Now, the name in all caps, all right, on your bills and court filings, that is not an accident. All right? When you look at your LLC and when it's formed or formed, okay, it is in all caps. All right? Any corporate entity is in all caps. So that essentially confirms that your all caps name is a commercial entity. All right? The other thing I want to tap into is how your signature creates value. So when you sign for a loan, you are creating credit. Where is that credit coming from? How is my signature used as a financial instrument by the bank. The bank should have more money than me, right? The bank should hold more weight and have more power than me, right? Okay. Now, the bank also uses your identity and paperwork to monetize the obligation. So when you sign an agreement, it says that you have an obligation for something, but under 18 USC 8, it says that the United States is pretty much obligated to everything. All the obligations are of the United States. You dig me? Just like a trust or a bond. All right? You understand, back in the day when they used to give us bonds, savings bonds, you can actually monetize that and get money from that. Okay? So while there's some end of the spectrum where this may just be a theory. Okay? The fact that there's a SSN trust account, all right? But you can also argue that there's people who have tapped in and used that money from the trust. Okay? So while there may not be a secret SSN account to tap into, that inherently a lot of people think that they're just going to go fight for this money in a trust account, understanding that you are the creditor and that your signature holds value is the essential piece of understanding this whole economic mechanism, okay? Because it's obvious when you look at modern money mechanics that your signature holds value, okay? If your signature holds value, then, forget the aspect of I want to get money, millions of dollars from my SSN trust account. Just understand how to utilize your signature. That's the key. If I told you that your signature can create unlimited amount of credit, regardless if you was sovereign or if you tapped into a SSN account or proved to them that there was a SSN account, would you be stuck on the SSN secret account as much as you are? You tapped into this video thinking I was just going to tell you how to get millions of dollars from your SSN. And I'm not saying that's not to be true. I'm not saying that hasn't happened before. But it's not what you think it is. Okay? If you was hoping that the SSN was going to be, this SSN trust is going to be easily and readily available to you if you fight for it, I promise you that is not how it works. Okay? It's a credit system that all you need to do is sign for it and it will be created. No need to tap into a trust. Your signature is already monetizable. Your signature is the gold. You can create a promissory note, and that is a negotiable instrument that creates the credit. This now becomes proof of income for the bank. If you understand that fact, you wouldn't go looking for an SSN trust. Okay? So this is where the UCC law, consumer protection, and debt discharge tactics come into play, because people want to understand this aspect and be free so that they can discharge debt. But what if I told you that you didn't need to be sovereign? You didn't need to have an SSN. You didn't need to tap into an SSN account in order to discharge debt. What if I told you that all of that is just a pipe dream, thinking that you're going to get your SSN someday when you become free, and that's just going to make you get millions of dollars. Okay? People will tell you that you need your SSN or you need to be sovereign in order to discharge debt. Now, I won't tell you that doing those steps and setting up certain things won't inherently make you stronger in consumer law protection, but it's not even that important. Don't get sold on the fact of, and not to knock anybody's hustle, but don't get sold on the fact of spending thousands of dollars to go sovereign so that you can discharge debt. If you know the law, if you understand the law, you can actually communicate your sovereignty or communicate your separation from your straw man legally. It's written in the law. Okay? It doesn't change the fact that you can file a UCC1 and things of that nature to be able to take ownership over your straw man or publicly separate yourself from the straw man. But the aspect of doing that, people think that they're going to get millions of dollars for doing that. But that won't happen. Okay? So I'm going to tell you guys how to use this concept legally. I'm going to bring more of an understanding to this concept so that you aren't going and looking for a pipe dream of you tapping into an SSN and getting millions of dollars as soon as you become private. That's not the case. Okay, this is a much needed video because a lot of us get stuck on trying to be private. I get phone calls from people who say, oh, I want to be more private, just for me to tell them that that's not even going to bring you closer to financial freedom in the way you think it is. I end up telling them, hey, no, the way that you're going to get closer to financial freedom, if you're trying to do it this way, and the quicker and easier way is to fix your credit. Remove those negative items on your credit, and none of that even requires you to be sovereign. You can communicate with the credit bureau about information on your credit report, and they have to do it. They're not going to ask you to be sovereign. So I'm going to put it out there that you don't need to claim to be a sovereign citizen or access a secret trust in order to discharge debt, in order to get the credit, in order to get the millions of dollars. Because there are business owners and entities that access millions of dollars in funding, and they are not considered sovereign. You dig me? They created a business and used their credit as collateral in order to get business funding. Then they built the revenue in the business, and when they built the revenue in the business, they ended up getting more money. But someone says, oh, I don't want to do that. What would be the point of you getting millions in a trust if you're not trying to actually get assets? Oh, so I can just live free. Well, you really can live free. Just live off the grid. But we won't tap into that. So let's just talk about the legal premise of some of the laws that will allow you to discharge debt regardless of the sovereign citizenship without the correcting your status, without trying to access the SSN secret trust. Because when I teach you guys these concepts, none of them start with make sure you are a sovereign citizen. But before we do that, let me tap into a couple of things that the historic and legal background when it comes to the straw man. First things first, we'll come back to this, but let's just go straight to House Joint Resolution 192. Okay, you can literally Google House Joint Resolution 192 online, and it's going to break down exactly when Congress almost 100 years ago eliminated the gold standard and essentially created this credit system. Okay, because when they went bankrupt in 1933, they enacted House Joint Resolution 192 that suspended the gold standard and abrogated the gold clause. Most of us don't know that gold was the original money, and before everything, and this is also expressed in modern money mechanics, but before you was actually getting credit, before you was actually, using bank accounts, well, in the way that we use it now, we was actually exchanging gold for paper notes. Okay. And then it got to a point where people didn't want to carry around their ingots, so they started to exchange these notes that the banks gave them and gave other people the notes, and they would take those notes and exchange those notes for gold in the bank. Well, what happened was when they took away the gold and confiscated the gold and suspended the gold standard, you couldn't actually get gold. Okay? So if you wasn't able to get gold, all right, what are we paying with at this point in time? And that's when they developed Federal Reserve notes. That's when they developed the fractional reserve system. But the main premise of House Joint Resolution 192 is essentially saying that this resolution declared that any obligation requiring payment in gold or a particular kind of coin or currency or an in amount in money policy, and every obligation herefore or hereinafter incurred shall be discharged upon payment dollar for dollar in any coin or currency which at the time of payment is legal tender for public and private debts. So a lot of times people will look at this and they don't know how to communicate this, and they think that when they become sovereign that your sovereignty is going to keep you from having to communicate this. But that is not true. You can also go to Trading with the Enemy Act of 1933, which goes hand in hand with House Joint Resolution 192, which is 12 U.S.C. 95A, which breaks down how all debts have, all obligations have been acquitted. Okay? So essentially, this paved the way for a credit-based currency because there was no gold. Okay? So at this point, this started to lead the US government to use citizens as collateral in the public debt system. So in 1933, the government declared bankruptcy and shifted from gold to credit. Dig me? And that's when your identity, birth certificate, and SSN started playing a bigger role in the financial system than anyone has ever told you. All right. So then we dive into the CUSIP number because, the CUSIP number is also a confirmation of certain things like that your birth certificate is a financial instrument. Okay. Because it says a CUSIP number is a unique 9-digit identification number assigned to financial securities in the United States and in Canada. Okay. So aspect of it being a financial security confirms that the CUSIP number is essentially a account number, okay, that only gets tied to something that is worth financial value. All right. So another thing we want to tap into is when we look up bills. Okay. Let's see if we look up bills. Okay, not the Buffalo Bills, utility bills. All right. Let's see if we pull this up. Typically on a utility bill, let me move this down. On a utility bill, it looks a little bit like this. Hold on. Let's open this up much bigger. Okay, this is not what we want. So I just found this random bill template online. None of this is not real people. But ultimately, most of us look at our bill statement, and our bill statement looks a little bit like this. Okay, where our name is in all caps. You dig me? Our address and things in that nature. And the whole point of me bringing this up is because when you look at a business entity, you got to ask yourself, why is my name in all caps on every single document? Okay, on bills, licenses, legal forms, because that's not really a mistake. Okay, that's a legal fiction. The straw man being addressed in commerce. And the aspect of this is not to the fact that you will get out of having an all caps name on these legal forms. It's just that when you go and you start to represent yourself using these legal forms, you're going to go and say, hey, well, that is not me. That is my legal fiction. Okay. So now we kind of seen this. Let me tie it back to the premise of consumer law and how to essentially utilize this to your benefit. Okay. The proper way. All right. The legal process behind it, okay? Because ultimately you can go in with a sovereign citizen argument, but just know that it's a much harder argument trying to argue your sovereign status in a way that, it can work, but not just for its average person who has who doesn't know everything I'm about to talk about right now, okay? So let's dive into the aspect of tender of payment, okay? Or as a matter of fact, let's go straight to a negotiable instrument, okay? Now, a negotiable instrument means an unconditional promise or order to pay a fixed amount of money with or without interest or other charges described in the promise or order if it is payable to the bearer or payable on demand, such and such. Instrument means a negotiable instrument. Order, promise or order, check. Instrument is a promise, okay? Check means a draft, which also falls under the aspect of an instrument, okay? But notice you're seeing a lot of promise, all right? If it is a promise, then there is an aspect of promises. It's not an aspect of, anything else other than that, all right? So then we dive into the definition of a tender. A tender is to unconditionally offer money or performance to meet an obligation. There we go again. Okay, it's an offer, okay, unconditional offer of money or performance to meet an obligation. Doesn't say the dollar, because most of us don't know that the Federal Reserve note is a unconditional offer of money or performance. Most people don't know that a Federal Reserve note is an IOU because that was something that was borrowed by the Federal Reserve. And if the Federal Reserve, if they was actually giving us those IOU dollars, which they do not, they deposit into our account, which is an unpaid balance, then essentially they are also offering money. Okay, they're not giving us money, they're offering it. Okay, it's two different things. It never says give us money. Okay? Then we dive into, let's just look at the definition of a promissory note, which is essentially what they call your loan agreement. Your loan agreement is a written, legally binding agreement where one party or borrower promises to repay a specific amount of money to another party under agreed upon terms. Okay? Now, let's go to 3-603. When you start to use a tender of payment, okay, it says if a tender of payment of an obligation to pay an instrument is made to a person entitled to enforce the instrument and the tender is refused, there is discharge to the extent of the amount of tender of the obligation of the endorser or the accommodation party having the right of recourse with respect to the obligation to which the tender relates. So ultimately, when you are discharging, none of this says that you have to be sovereign. You can literally be a corporation versus another corporation, and you can challenge them on these same exact things. It doesn't say that you have to be sovereign in order to create a negotiable instrument or a promise to pay. It also says you don't have to be sovereign in order to enforce it. You just have to know the legal premise behind doing it. Okay? And when it comes to the coupon remittance is also a security, is also a negotiable instrument, is also a type of tender. Okay? So if you do this, you file a tender of payment, okay, and they refuse it, then there's discharge without you being a sovereign citizen. Okay? So if you create a negotiable instrument that's backed by your signature, that has now become a financial asset to them. No matter how you spin it, no matter if you're sovereign or not. Okay? If you have a legal fiction, okay, within the United States, and you are making these, and you are creating credit with your signature, then that alone is already written in the law. Okay? So let's say you do all of this. All right? They have under the presentment, C3-501, when you make a demand, okay, essentially they fall under a contract to essentially write back to you. Okay? And it is effective when the demand for payment or acceptance is received. All right? Long story short, it's already accepted until that person comes back and says, oh, it's refused. Okay? If they don't say anything, then you will assume they accepted it. But if they refused it, then we dive into the tender of payment, which it says that if the tender is refused, there is discharge. The thing is, we want to send our negotiable instrument in presentment form. We want to present our negotiable instrument so that it can get refused, so that it can get discharged. If you guys are moving in honor, then it will be nothing for you to worry about. Okay? Then we dive into the definition of the term credit. Okay? The term credit means the right granted by a creditor to a debtor to defer payment of debt, to incur debt and defers payment. But let's just talk about the aspect of the legal premise of the strawman fact as well, okay? Because it says that the term organization means a corporation, okay? And it says the term person means a natural person, which is me, or an organization. So we know that living skin is a natural person. We know that. But you got to ask yourself, what is the organization aspect of a person? Okay, Bank of America can't be either or. Corporate entity can't be either or. All right. So then it says the term creditor refers to only a person, keyword person, who both regularly extends, whether in connection with loans, sales of property, services, or otherwise consumer credit, which is payable by agreement in more than 4 installments for which the payment of a finance charge is or may be required. Okay. So the aspect of saying that a creditor refers only to a person is another fact that proves that you are the one creating, who you are the actual creditor. You're the original creditor. So if you're the original creditor, now it gives them the burden of proof to prove that you aren't the creditor. Okay? And that they are the person, that they are a natural person or an organization. All right. So then we dive into 15 USC 1692G, which dives into the validation of debt. And I can go through this, but ultimately, long story short, you can challenge them and ask them to provide a proof of claim that there is a debt to be owed. Okay. On these premises, when you start to ask them these things and you start to challenge them on these things without being a sovereign citizen, they must provide it. You don't have to be a sovereign citizen for them to provide information based off the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act that will determine whether they loaned the money to you, whether they are the holder in due course. This is when we dive in 15 UCC 3-305, okay? Where essentially they will have to prove that they are the holder in due course, that they have legal standing to collect on the debt. So essentially, it's not about you being sovereign, but when you act as the real party of interest instead of the straw man, you flip the script and you take the power back in your favor, regardless if you put out a public notice that you're a sovereign citizen or not. If you put a public notice out there that you are that you have real interest in whatever the asset or the collateral is, or the credit and things in that nature, then essentially they have to honor that, regardless if you're a sovereign citizen, regardless if you access the trust, regardless if you know how to tap into the SSN money, this, that, and the third, because we know the SSN money is credit, and there would be no way for you to sign for something and get unlimited amount of money if you position yourself properly if that wasn't the case. And it doesn't even matter if it was an SSN account, because the money would just be created out of thin air anyways. Okay? So now that we kind of just understand this, and I hope you guys understand me when I tap into you guys about this. All right? At the end of the day, your entity is more powerful than you have been told. Okay? Whether there is a secret trust out there or not, your understanding on how debts and contracts work is the real weapon. All right? Because you can know how to be sovereign, or you can know these concepts or legal theories, but if you don't know the actual how debt and how contracts works, and how to enforce contracts, how to lock them in a contract, knowing what a dishonor is, knowing how to have them default on a contract just like they do you will be in a position where you will, no matter what, lose against the fraudulent banking system, the court systems. Okay, they're gonna always work against you. Okay, now, not to downplay the aspect of tapping into your sovereignty. That's something, by all means, it'll take time, effort, and sometimes there are people out here charging you thousands of dollars to set up these documents. But I'll be the one to tell you that this is not something that you have to spend thousands of dollars for to do. Okay, learn the law, understand it. And when you learn and understand the law to an extent, then you'll know how to communicate your sovereignty or your position, or the fact that you're not your straw man, that you're representing your straw man. You can communicate these things without putting out a public notice. Not denying the fact that you can be able to get certain things, do not detain and things of that nature if you put out that public notice. But if you don't know how contracts work, you don't know that you have to present this information to all those parties involved, and you have to get a type of response from those parties. And if you don't get a response from those parties, then you know that was accepted. A lot of people do this stuff and they say, well, nothing happened. Well, what do you expect? If you understand the law, then if nothing happens, you've already won. If somebody ignores your presentment, you already won. You know that they have nothing to say. Think about it. When somebody sends you a debt and you don't respond, you have defaulted. Think about it. You already know you lost when you couldn't respond back to that debt collector. So what do you think that they are thinking when you send them something and they do not respond? Oh, shoot, this person is the real deal. Okay, now that we kind of just got to the end of this video, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Tapping into the SSN theory, the Strawman Theory. I would suggest tapping into this book called Meet Your Strawman if you want to learn more about this, okay? But also at the same time, understand it from an aspect to understand and understand and overstand the law, versus being in a position where you're going to scream this book to everybody and hope they're going to give you millions of dollars. This is just to enforce and empower you to tap into consumer law, to tap into debt, to tap into contracts. So take a look down below, grab my complete debt guide. The complete debt guide is only $47. It's going to have templates. It's going to have contract law understanding. I talk about the administrative process. It's not going to be legal advice. It's all educational. I'm teaching you things that you can all search and look up online, but I have it more streamlined, put in the complete debt guide, okay? Along with templates that I put together. The second thing is, if you need help navigating debt, okay, or courts, all right, down below, you can tap in with Solo Suit and they will essentially do certain things for you, like debt validation and prevent lawsuits. You can pay them up front without learning, and they will help you get the job done. Okay. And if you're looking for more of a one-on-one mentorship as it pertains to credit, as it pertains to funding, as it pertains to creating an online business to make money, tap in with my mentorship. Go ahead and apply to my mentorship, but it's only for those people that actually want to either fix their credit, start a business, and get funding. If you're not trying to do that and you think you're gonna call and get mentorship on these consumer law aspects and debt discharge, I'm gonna tell you to tap into my YouTube channel and get the complete debt guide. Okay, it's a steal for you to get this, and when I make a new video, you get new templates and things of that nature, and I update the complete debt guide for only 47 bucks. But if you want more than that, more of a hands-on approach, apply to my one-on-one mentorship. And then lastly, follow my Instagram. Okay, I post daily content on Instagram. This is where you can connect with me on a more consistent basis. And my last question is, what is your take on Strawman Theory? Okay, I'm open to hearing your thoughts. I'm open to hearing your theories. I'm open to hearing any more case law, any other confirmations and research that you guys have done, and I'll be happy to do a video on it. All right, so make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Turn on the post notifications, and I'll see you on the next one.